Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. You know the drill, right? You're here because you value your time. You want the insights, the stuff that matters, without drowning in a sea of data.
Exactly. No time for filler, straight to the good stuff.
And that's what we're doing today. We're diving deep, no pun intended, into the world of geothermal power equipment.
So we're not talking about geothermal energy itself, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, harnessing the Earth's heat, all that good stuff.
Right, but we're going deeper, looking at the equipment, the machinery that makes all of that possible. The stuff that makes geothermal energy, actually work.
The nuts and bolts, if you will.
Exactly. And to guide us, we have a fantastic report here, Global Geothermal Power Equipment Market Report 2025.
Yeah, it's packed with information.
And our mission today is to cut through the noise, give you the key takeaways. What's the market size? Where's it headed? What's driving it? All that good stuff.
So by the end of this, you'll be able to impress your friends at dinner parties.
Well, maybe. But at least you'll have a solid grasp of this crucial piece of the renewable energy puzzle.
Definitely.
Okay, so just to give us a starting point, the report sets the global market size at a pretty hefty 28,340 million USD in 2025.
Yeah, that's 28.34 billion for those who like their numbers rounded.
A lot of zeros, no matter how you slice it. But the big question is, where does it go from there?
Right, what does the future hold? Well, that's where things get interesting. The report projects a pretty significant jump to 44,829.8 million USD by 2033.
Whoa, okay, that's a big leap. What kind of growth are we talking about here?
We're looking at a KGR, a compound annual growth rate of 5.90% from 2025 to 2033.
Okay, and just to make sure everyone's on the same page, what exactly does KGR mean?
Right, so KGR basically smooths out the yearly ups and downs to give you an average annual growth percentage over a certain period.
Got it. So in this case, a 5.90% CBGR means we can expect the market to grow, roughly speaking, by that much every year.
Yeah, on average, that's what we're looking at.
Yeah. Okay, so not just a temporary spike, but consistent, pretty impressive growth. What's fueling this upward trend? What's driving all this?
Well, there are a few key factors at play here. First, you've got the global push towards renewable energy. That's a big one.
No surprise there.
Right. It's a major tailwind for anything related to renewables, geothermal included. And then there's the ever-growing demand for energy worldwide. More people, more industries, more everything means more energy needed.
Makes sense.
On top of that, we're seeing some really cool advancements in the technology itself, both in how we access geothermal resources deep underground and the efficiency of the equipment used to generate power.
So it's getting easier and more efficient to tap into this energy source.
Precisely. And then, of course, you have governments all over the world putting policies and incentives in place to support renewable energy growth.
Tax breaks, subsidies, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So it's a combination of factors all kind of coming together at the right time.
Okay, so we've got this perfect storm of environmental need, growing demand, technological progress, and government support. That paints a pretty clear picture. Now, where is all this happening? Where is this market concentrated right now?
Well, right now, North America is holding the lion's share, over 40% of the global revenue.
Wow, so they're really leading the charge.
Yeah, their market size in 2025 is estimated at 10,485.80 million USD, and they're projected to keep growing with a TGR of 4.4% through 2033.
Okay, so a little slower growth than the global average, but still pretty substantial.
Exactly.
What about Europe? Where do they stand?
Europe's a major player too, no surprise there. They're holding over 30% of the global revenue.
Impressive.
Yeah, their market size in 2025 is projected at 8,218.60 million USD, and they're expected to grow at a solid 5% CAGR.
Okay, so both North America and Europe are pretty established players in this market. Now, where are we seeing the most exciting growth, the real hot spot, so to speak?
That would be the Asia-Pacific region, or APAC for short.
APAC, got it.
They're currently holding about 23% of the global revenue, with a market size of 6,801.60 million USD in 2025.
Okay, so not quite at the level of North America or Europe yet, but...
But here's the kicker. They're projected to have the highest growth rate of any region, a whopping 8.6% CAGR from 2025 to 2033.
Wow, okay, that's significant. So they're really poised to become a major force in this market.
Definitely.
Now, what about the rest of the world? South America, the Middle East, Africa, what's happening in those regions?
Yeah, so these regions have smaller market shares currently, but they're definitely worth watching. They're all showing promising growth trajectories.
Okay, let's break it down. What are we looking at in terms of numbers?
Sure. South America is sitting at over 5% of global revenue. Their market size in 2025 is projected at 1,076.92 million USD, with a TAR of 6.6%.
Okay, so healthy growth there. What about the Middle East?
The Middle East is around 2% of the global revenue, estimated at 11,133.60 million USD in 2025, and they're looking at a CAGR of 7.2%.
And finally, Africa.
Africa's starting from a smaller base, around 1% of global revenue, with a 2025 market size of 623.48 million USD. But they're also projected to grow at a decent clip, 6.2% CAGR.
Okay, so across the board, even outside the big players, we're seeing a consistent upward trend.
Exactly. As these regions prioritize renewable energy and develop their geothermal resources, there's a lot of room for expansion.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got this bird's eye view of the global market. Now let's zoom in a bit, get a little more granular. Starting with North America, which countries are the key drivers there?
Well, in North America, the United States is the powerhouse, no question about it.
Unsurprising given their size and resources.
Yeah, their projected market size in 2025 is 8,273.30 million USD, with a CGR of 4.2%.
Okay, so still a strong growth rate, even if it's a bit lower than the global average. What's driving their dominance?
Well, a big factor is government support. They've got federal and state level incentives like the Production Tax Credit, or PTC, and the Investment Tax Credit, or ITC.
And these are specifically for renewable energy projects.
Exactly. And they also have Renewable Portfolio Standards, or RPS, which require a certain percentage of electricity to come from renewable sources.
So these policies really help create a favorable environment for geothermal projects.
Yeah. They make a big difference.
Okay, what about Canada and Mexico? How are they contributing to North America's market share?
Canada is making a solid contribution. Their market size in 2025 is projected at 1,258.30 million USD, with a slightly higher CGR of 5.2%.
Okay, so they're actually growing a bit faster than the U.S.
Yeah, they've got government investments in renewable energy and a need to diversify their energy sources, especially in remote communities.
Makes sense. And what about Mexico?
Mexico's market is estimated at 954.21 million USD in 2025, with a projected TAGR of 4.9%.
So steady growth across the board in North America.
Definitely.
Now, you mentioned something interesting earlier about the advantages of geothermal energy in a place like the U.S., something about stable energy supply.
Oh yeah, that's a crucial point. Geothermal energy offers a very consistent and reliable energy source, especially compared to solar and wind.
Right, because the sun isn't always shining and the wind isn't always blowing.
Exactly. But with geothermal, you're tapping into the Earth's heat, which is always there. So it can provide what's called baseload power, meaning it's available 24/7.
Ah, I see. So it's a very dependable source of energy, which
Yeah.
is a big deal for utilities and industries.
Huge deal. And it also helps with energy security because it reduces reliance on imported fossil fuels.
Right, which is a major concern for many countries these days.
Absolutely. And beyond just generating electricity, geothermal can also be used for direct use applications like heating and cooling.
So that further boosts the demand for equipment.
Precisely.
Okay, let's hop over to Europe now. You mentioned it's a substantial market, but which countries are leading the way there?
Well, the UK is showing very strong growth.
Interesting.
Yeah, their market size in 2025 is projected at 1,380.72 million USD, with a pretty impressive CEGR of 5.8%.
Okay, so what's fueling their growth?
They're investing a lot in deep geothermal projects, which tap into hotter resources further underground.
I see.
And they're also big on district heating systems, where geothermal heat is used to warm multiple buildings in a neighborhood.
Ah, so instead of each building having its own boiler, they share a geothermal heating system.
Exactly. Very efficient, especially in colder climates.
Makes sense. Now, what about other key players in Europe?
Germany's another big one. They've got a market size of 1,627.28 million USD in 2025 and a TAGR of 5.2%.
Okay, so they're a major player too. What's driving their growth?
Well, they've got very ambitious renewable energy policies under something called the Energy Wende, which means energy transition.
So they're really pushing for a shift to renewables.
Big time. And then you have other significant markets like France, Italy, and Russia. Their 2025 market sizes range from 706.80 million USD to 1,273.88 million USD, with CAGRs between 4% and 4.4%.
Okay, so a good mix of countries contributing to Europe's overall market share.
Right. And we can't forget Spain and Sweden. They also have noteworthy markets, though a bit smaller.
Okay, good to know. Now, what about the bigger picture in Europe? What's the overall support system that's enabling all this growth?
Well, European governments are generally very proactive in supporting geothermal energy. They've got a range of mechanisms in place.
Like what kind of mechanisms?
Well, there are direct subsidies, tax incentives to make projects more financially attractive, and they're putting a lot of money into research and development.
So they're really putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's the EU's Green Deal and Renewable Energy Directive.
These are kind of like overarching policies for the entire EU.
Exactly. They set targets for increasing the use of renewables, which obviously benefits geothermal energy.
Makes sense.
And on top of that, many individual countries have their own feed-in tariffs and other financial instruments to incentivize geothermal projects.
So it's a very supportive environment overall.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift our focus now to the Asia-Pacific region, the one with the super high growth rate. Which countries there are we keeping an eye on?
Well, China is the big kahuna in APAC. Their market size in 2025 is a massive 2,856.67 million USD, and they're projected to grow at a CAGR of 8.1%.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, their government is very committed to clean energy, plus they have rapid urbanization, which means a huge need for reliable power.
So it's a perfect fit for geothermal energy.
Exactly.
Now, what about other key players in APAC?
India is a really interesting one. They've got a lot of untapped geothermal potential.
Ah, so they're just getting started.
In a way, yeah. Their market size in 2025 is projected at 680.16 million USD, but their CAGR is a whopping 10.5%.
Wow, so they're really poised for explosive growth.
Definitely. And then there's Japan with a 2025 market size of 938.62 million USD and a QR of 7.1%. And South Korea at 816.19 million USD and a 7.7% CAGR.
Okay, so a lot of activity in those countries. What about the rest of the region?
You've got Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, and the Southeast Asian nations. They're all contributing to the region's dynamic growth, each with their own unique situation.
So it's a very diverse and dynamic region overall.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating about APAC is that some of these countries are essentially leapfrogging over older energy infrastructure.
What do you mean by that?
Well, instead of relying heavily on fossil fuels or even intermittent renewables, they're building their energy systems around more stable sources like geothermal.
Ah, so they're kind of skipping a step, going straight to the more advanced and sustainable option.
Precisely. It's a smart move, especially for rapidly developing economies.
Definitely. Now, what's driving this overall strong performance in APAC? What's behind this surge in demand for geothermal power equipment?
Well, it's a few things. Rapid urbanization and industrial expansion mean they need a lot more electricity.
Makes sense.
And many countries in the region are prioritizing baseload power sources, meaning sources that are available 24/7, like geothermal.
Okay, so they want stability and reliability.
Exactly. It helps them reduce reliance on expensive fossil fuel imports and strengthens their energy security.
So it's a strategic move as well.
Definitely. And that all translates into a booming market for geothermal power equipment.
Okay, so we've covered North America, Europe, and APAC. Let's touch briefly on those other regions we mentioned, South America, the Middle East, and Africa. What's influencing their geothermal markets?
Okay, so in South America, it's a combination of government support for clean energy and growing demand from industries.
Ooh, so similar drivers to what we're seeing elsewhere.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, the Middle East is interesting because they're traditionally reliant on oil and gas.
Right, they're the big fossil fuel producers.
Exactly. But now they're looking to diversify their energy mix. And countries like Turkey and the UAE are exploring geothermal for both electricity and direct use applications.
Like what kind of direct use applications?
Things like industrial heating processes and even desalination of seawater.
Wow, okay, so they're getting creative with it.
Yeah, they're finding new ways to harness that geothermal heat.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Africa, it's all about industrialization and the need for reliable power.
Makes sense.
Countries like Kenya and Ethiopia are leading the way, and they're also exploring direct use in agriculture.
Okay, so across all these regions, it's a mix of government policies, growing energy needs, and the specific advantages of geothermal that are shaping the market.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered the where. Now let's talk about the what. What are the different types of equipment that make up this market?
Right, so there are different ways to categorize the equipment. We can look at it by the type of geothermal power plant or by the specific product or component.
Okay, let's start with power plants. What are the main types?
Historically, dry steam plants have been the most common. They're pretty simple, really. They use high-temperature steam straight from underground to spin turbines and generate electricity.
So it's like tapping into a natural geyser to power a generator.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Very efficient if you have the right geological conditions.
Makes sense. Now, the report mentions another type of plant that's experiencing rapid growth. What is that?
That would be binary cycle power plants.
Okay, what are those?
Well, they're a bit more complex. They can use lower temperature geothermal resources, typically between 85 degrees C and 175 degrees C.
Okay, so not hot enough to create steam directly.
Exactly. So they use the geothermal heat to warm up a second fluid that has a lower boiling point.
I see.
This second fluid turns into vapor, and that vapor drives the turbine to generate electricity.
So it's like using the geothermal heat as a middleman.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty clever.
It is, and it allows us to tap into geothermal resources that weren't accessible before.
So it's opening up new possibilities for geothermal energy.
Exactly. Countries like Germany, Turkey, and Japan are really embracing this technology.
Okay, so that's plant types. Now, what about specific equipment? What are the major product segments in the geothermal power equipment market?
Well, the biggest one right now is transformers.
Transformers, okay. I don't know much about those.
They're essential for regulating the voltage of the electricity. Geothermal plants often produce electricity at lower voltages, and transformers step it up for efficient transmission over long distances.
Ah, okay. So it's like a
Yeah.
gear shifter for electricity.
Yeah, kind of. And then they step it down again at the other end for safe use by consumers.
Makes sense. So transformers are a critical part of the infrastructure.
Absolutely. And in geothermal applications, they need to be very robust and reliable.
Right, because they're handling a lot of power, 247.
Exactly.
Okay, what other product segments are important?
Another big one is generators. They're seeing a lot of growth right now because of the increasing geothermal capacity being installed worldwide.
Makes sense. More power plants mean more generators needed.
Precisely. And the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, expects geothermal energy production to keep growing significantly.
So the demand for generators will continue to rise.
Definitely.
And just briefly, what about those other categories of equipment mentioned in the report?
Well, you've got turbines, which are the heart of the power generation process. Separators, which are used in dry steam plants to ensure clean, dry steam. Condensers, which are important for efficiency. And then there are broader categories like full flow and dual cycle power generation systems, and different end users like utilities, industries, and even residential and commercial buildings.
Okay, so it's a pretty diverse range of equipment.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered the key players, the different regions, and the types of equipment. Now let's talk about the bigger picture. What are the major trends shaping this industry, the things that are driving it forward, but also the challenges it faces?
Right. So we've touched on some of the main drivers already. The global shift towards renewable energy, supportive government policies, and the growing demand for electricity.
Those are the big ones for sure.
Yeah, but there are also some challenges or restraints to consider.
Like what?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is the high upfront cost of geothermal projects.
Yeah, that makes sense. Drilling deep into the earth can't be cheap.
Definitely not. And there are also geological risks.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you never know for sure what you're going to find underground. You could drill a well and find nothing, or the resource might not be as hot or as productive as you expected.
So there's a bit of a gamble involved.
Yeah, there's always an element of uncertainty.
Okay, so those are the challenges. Now, what about the trends shaping the future of this market? What should we be paying attention to?
Well, supportive government policies will continue to be crucial, but technological advancements are also key.
Okay, what kind of advancements?
Well, there's a lot of research going on in enhanced geothermal systems, or EGS.
What are those?
They basically try to create artificial geothermal reservoirs in areas where natural ones don't exist.
Wow, okay, so that could really expand the potential of geothermal energy.
Exactly. And advancements in binary cycle technology are making it more efficient to use lower temperature resources.
Right, we talked about that earlier.
And then there's research into supercritical geothermal technologies, which could tap into much deeper and hotter resources.
So potentially a lot more power output.
Exactly. And overall, there's a big push to make geothermal power equipment more efficient and cost-effective.
So it's all about pushing the boundaries, making geothermal more accessible and affordable.
Absolutely.
Okay, final question. Who are the major players in this market, the companies driving all this innovation and growth?
Well, there are some big industrial players like Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Toshiba, Fuji Electric, and Ormat Technologies.
Those are some familiar names.
Yeah, they're all involved in various aspects of power generation. And then there are more specialized companies like Loki Geothermal and Turboden, who focus specifically on geothermal technology.
Okay, so a good mix of established players and newer, more specialized companies.
Right. And we're also seeing a lot of collaborations and strategic investments.
Can you give us some examples?
Sure. In May 2021, Iberdrola, a big utility company, partnered with Mitsubishi Power to develop clean energy solutions, including geothermal.
So a utility company teaming up with a technology provider. That makes sense.
Yeah, they're combining their expertise. And then in May 2022, Baker Hughes, another energy technology giant, invested in Greenfire Energy, a company specializing in closed-loop advanced geothermal systems.
So those are good signs showing that there's a lot of interest and investment in the sector.
Definitely.
Okay, let's wrap things up. What's the key takeaway for our listeners? What's the big picture here?
Well, the global geothermal power equipment market is on a very strong growth trajectory.
And that's driven by.
The increasing need for renewable energy sources, the support from governments, and those exciting technological advancements we talked about.
Right, so a lot of factors coming together to create a very positive outlook.
Exactly.
And what's the so what for our listeners? Why should they care about all of this?
Well, this growth means a lot of economic opportunities for companies in the geothermal sector.
Sure, that's always good.
But it also means we're moving towards a cleaner and more sustainable energy future.
Right, and that's something we should all care about.
Absolutely. Geothermal energy is a vital part of the solution to climate change and energy security.
Definitely. Okay, here's a final thought to leave our listeners with. Given everything we've talked about, the growing interest in energy independence, the incredible potential of geothermal energy, what unexpected innovations or global shifts could further accelerate this growth? What could reshape the geothermal landscape in ways we can't even imagine right now? It's something to ponder as this fascinating and increasingly important industry continues to evolve. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next time.